Welcome to the worst nightmare of all. Reality.
Explore the lesser-known stories of our unknown world. Join the pursuit of the paranormal with Ash and Greg.
Hello, Ash.
Hello, Greg.
How you doing?
Greg, I'm good. Very
Good.
good. Very, very good.
Yeah, so this is another episode where we're sort of doing it midweek
Yep.
because of some sort of a break-in or an interesting topic that's come out today.
Just developing, yeah, kind of.
So, like we did with the David Grush stuff, we thought we'd jump on.
It's super interesting, and there's a lot to talk about, so this could be a long episode.
And I think the word you used was insane. I was starting to read it, and even when I Googled some stuff about it, people were just like, this is crazy, insane detail. And so what is it then?
I don't even know how to start. So basically, yesterday, which is the would have been the July the 5th, basically a post appeared on Reddit, on the aliens subreddit on Reddit, and basically there's a guy. Well, I'm going to use he as pronoun. I don't think he ever actually says if it's a man or woman or whatever.
No.
But we'll use he just for ease. And he claims, as the Reddit thread starts, starting with a Reddit thread, that from the late 2000s to the mid 2010s, he worked as a molecular biologist for a national security contractor in a program to study what he calls biospheric organisms, which gets shortened to EBO. We're going to cover it all in much more detail, but basically what we're going to be talking about, and what he talks about, is basically working with alien bodies, is the gist of it.
Yeah. And as you'll find out, it's a slightly more detailed version coming up.
Very, very detailed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this stuff, and anyone's listened to our European roundtables when we sort of talk about these stories that come out, these anonymous sources. Take a lot of it with a lot of salt, not in a pinch of salt. Take it with a lot of salt. I'm very cynical. A lot of the stuff we talk about doesn't grab me interest at all. I just think, it's another anonymous Reddit source or Twitter person that's just randomly popped up and started saying stuff and nothing to back it up. But this guy, there's just something about it. And we'll go into much more detail, but this one, basically all day I've been deep in digging into this. I was at work trying to dig it all. I got home, I've just been spending hours doing a bit of digging. Getting it all written up in sort of easy to understand, because like we said, it's very, very, it's a lot of information. It's a hell of a lot of information, and it's very, very technical, and it's very hard to understand. So I sort of done it to try and break it down, so it's just a bit easier to actually understand what this guy's claiming.
Yeah, interestingly, he does put it into sort of sections, which helps, but then you sort of get halfway through, and when he talks about some of the stuff that we'll come on to, I literally didn't have a clue what he was saying. And as I'd gone on to I Googled bits, and other people are like, amazing, but I don't really understand a lot of it, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
It's super weird, and it's, like you say, it's super detailed. Technical language is what appears to be on point.
Definitely.
And it's such a long post that I don't know if a hoaxer, obviously, like you said, take that salt. That's quite. One other comment I read online was that's a lot of information for a hoaxer to put out just on like a one one long post on Reddit.
Yeah, and in addition to that, which we'll talk about all these points in a lot more detail, but there's a lot of comments on the post and lots of people asking questions. A lot of people who are in this field, in the sort of biology, genetics field. You can tell from the questions they're asking him, like that they know what they're talking about. It's like the people asking 5 questions of him, 10 questions of him in one post, and he's just responded to him like fast and with very detailed answers. And it's like, hoaxer isn't going to be doing that. So the guy 100% knows what he's talking about in terms of biology, genetics. So that side of it, when we come on to him, is legit. There's no question in it for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, the claims making, obviously that's obviously a dubious bit, because it's saying he's working on alien bodies on behalf of the government contractor. And this is beyond crash retrieval, as what we talked about recently. This is far beyond that and the implications of this being true. I mean, obviously, we've been talking about quite a lot of we've got bodies retrieved as well as part of crash retrievals. This guy, with the information he's given about working on multiple alien bodies in this lab, it's insane.
And just as a slight side note, that the artwork for this episode, we basically put through the description that this Redditor done, put it through Night Cafe, which is an AI art generator thing that I've used for a long time now, and that has generated this image based on some of the description that this guy has given. So, and it kind of looks like how I pictured it as well. So, just as a slight side note.
Yeah. So I thought we'd start on the basically the company he said he worked for, which was the Leidos Biomedical Research Lab at the Frederick National Lab at Fort Detrick in Maryland, in the USA.
Yeah.
So having done a bit of digging on that company, they Leidos Biomedical Lab Research specialise in genomics, proteomics, and genetics. They have contractors in defence, intelligence, homeland security, and biomedical genetics. This is obviously fact. It's from their own website.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they have got these contracts. They are in this field. So if there was going to be a company that might be contracted by the US government or military to work on these bodies, because we know the contracts are like the Bigelow, Lockheed, all these places with this stuff that meant to have crash retrieval. It's not like the government doing it; they contract it out.
Yeah,
and if you're going to contract out ET bodies, this sounds like it could be a contender for a company that they would use.
Yeah, it sounds. Yeah, that's right up their alley, basically, isn't it? And I know this guy does state that it's in the basement of one of these buildings. So it is away from the other workers, but it is in this facility that exists. Yeah. So,
and the lab does do obviously real other normal lab where there's this sort of secret bit. It calls it clandestine operations in like this part of the basement, and the sort of the health. Like I say, when we come on some of this stuff, like I say, is very, very technical, so it's kind of might be wrong in describing some of it because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about in half of this stuff. I'm trying to sort of interpret it, but like the health hazards they have is like more in this area than it is in the rest of the lab.
Yeah,
we have to go through like different parts to get into it, and it's all like in freezers and stuff, and all very, very.
It was interesting. Yeah, because he was saying that there was no janitors working in there. There was no cleaners as such. No outside kind of help.
Yeah,
that you would normally find in an office. Yeah. That the scientists working on there had to do all of that themselves, and all the Well, I mean, we'll come on to that, but it seemed like it was just in this normal building, but nobody apart from them was sort of there and had to do everything.
And that sort of little detail is until I read that bit, I hadn't even thought, like, in any sort of thing like this, like,
Yeah.
with crash retrieval and stuff, like say the cleaners, the handymen, the janitors, you don't even think about these random people that might work there.
No.
That, like, do they see this stuff? And he mentioned it like that there was no janitors. The scientists had to clean it all. Obviously, less people involved, the better. Especially with all, obviously, their contracts and NDAs and stuff.
Yeah.
Working there. So that was an interesting point that maybe not a lot of people actually think about in this.
And it was interesting because when I read that, I was like, yeah, hadn't really thought about it before, but it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So should we cover off how this guy got to because he puts a bit of information on there. Should we talk about how he got to work there? Because that's quite an interesting sort of journey for him as well. But
so he got his PhD.
Yep.
In molecular. There's going to be lots of words throughout this that I was kind of no idea how to pronounce. Molecular biology, and he was he was presenting his PhD research at a conference.
Yeah, and
one of the senior scientists in this department or whatever basically approached him and basically sort of got him set up to an interview or numerous interviews that the guy went on.
Yeah, that's it. He's like, there were sort of, I think it was four interviews, was it?
3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, and it was all like each one was slightly less about his science background as he got further through. And he kind of, he says that like the first interview, this guy who contacted him, he was like, I don't even think that my presentation was very good. And it didn't appear that the content of that was what they were after. So, and again, it's almost a bit sort of an X-File-y type journey. It's sort of like, I think he mentions the word, it was a stroke of luck. I think that he managed to get all these interviews. And then like the fourth interview was with solicitors or lawyers signing an NDA for non-disclosure agreement, and the lawyer pointing out exactly the NDA and what it meant, and
what
also
would happen if
you
broke it. Do this.
Yeah, which I had visions of like this lawyer basically saying, "You will go missing." Essentially, the desert's a big place.
Yeah.
But that was the kind of impression that I got from reading that. It was quite a big emphasis on this NDA, which you would expect. They want it to be watertight. And if you start blabbing, that's when shit hits the fan, basically. And these kind of people, if it's a clandestine operation and these sort of old school programs, they don't fuck about. You will have a car accident. You will get suicided, and they will unalive you somehow.
Yeah.
And you'll be made to look like you did it. That's how they work, basically.
That's why, like, I think some people in the comments mentioned it, like, if you're going to leak, like, maybe information he's leaked, which, when they feed people information, so that if it gets leaked, they know exactly who has leaked it. And doing it anonymously, no one knows this guy's real name. Whereas in the likes of David Grush, we know him, we know his face now. If something happened to him now, it would raise a lot of questions and red flags.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy now might disappear off Reddit, no one knows who he is, and never hear from him again. He could have just been unalived already.
Yeah.
And no one will ever know.
Yeah. And that was just going on to David Grush. That was actually quite an inspired move from him. You go fully public to that level, and like you say, if anything was to happen to him or his family, which I'm sure there was pressure, then it's very dodgy.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the Redditor, or this person who posted, has now deleted their Reddit account.
After, so it's very weird. So I didn't see all this bit unfold, but where he got suspended by Reddit itself.
Oh wow, I didn't see that.
Apparently, so I was reading comments, and the moderators and the admin of that subreddit were commenting because he put a comment on the main post saying he'd had comments deleted.
Saw that,
I didn't know why, but then the moderators come on and said, "No one deleted your comments. None of us, and we can see the activity, or whatever, and no one deleted any of your comments." Then got shadow banned, and his account was suspended twice throughout the day. But he was still able to message the admin team because they were sort of getting in touch with him. And then his account's now been deleted. It's weird. Well, and they've said that he wasn't them. They've not done anything to his account, but his account's been affected in that subreddit and on Reddit itself.
And the admins said they even tried to reach out to him to get some kind of verification, and that there was no verification coming. So that either lends itself to more sort of BS, or
I don't know.
It goes the other way, because it's kind of like if they're claiming that they didn't shadow ban him, they didn't delete his account or anything like that, somebody is.
I mean, I wouldn't give verification to moderators of a subreddit. You know what I mean?
No way.
Who are these? I don't know these people. He just chose that subreddit because it's a popular subreddit. It's an alien subreddit. He said he rather did it on aliens one rather than a UFO one because it is aliens rather than UFOs, which are two separate things.
He doesn't really mention, or he doesn't mention UFOs at all, does he?
No,
he just talks
these bodies that are worked on.
It's very intriguing. I do like it.
And a bit more just about him, like we say, to me, there's no doubt over his credentials, educationally wise, the language, the detail, the different links between different parts that he posts about. Yeah, he had that PhD. He definitely works in that field. And he talks about, we'll go into all this in a bit, but he talks about like he saw reports, memos, presentations, operating procedures, all relating to the biology of EBOs. And what was really interesting on this bit was that a few of these reports dealt with like the food and the religion of these creatures, these aliens, which is just mad. Like that they have reports on like how they live, which is just beyond they've got a body. It's we actually know about their religion and culture, which is another what the fuck step. Yeah,
but that's way out there compared to what's sort of going on at the moment. So he gets the job, he signs this NDA, and then he starts working there.
What I wanted to discuss before we move on is the actual term Biospheric organism, or EBO. I've never heard that before.
I haven't. I googled it.
Yep. And
what did you find? There's nothing.
Nothing.
No. The only thing that I found was people talking about this bloody Reddit post.
Yeah.
Which that's clever. Because in the post he says it's a historical term as well. And it's not sort of what it's about, but because it's a historical term for it, they use it. But you would think if it's a historical term, it would be on Google somewhere. I don't know.
It kind of reminds me of UAP because last few years it's been the term because the new term, but it's actually been used since the 50s. The term UAP. It's only sort of come to light recently, and the more we use it in more official documents and stuff.
Yeah,
but it has been around since the 50s, and it's just a term that maybe only very few people have worked on this stuff. So we might see in reports using the term going back to decades, but
Yeah.
if these have never been leaked, it has been kept that secret. There's probably lots of acronyms. America loves its acronyms.
Yeah.
So there's probably dozens and dozens of different ones that we'd never heard of. And like I say, I couldn't find anything.
Nope.
The thing I find is that NASA has an exobiology program, which aims to understand the origin, evolution, distribution, and future of life in the universe. So that was the sort of closest any sort of reference I could find. Because like the exo, obviously means just outside, basically. Biospheric, the biosphere is basically contains the Earth is a biosphere, contains life, and organism is a creature. So this EBO is basically saying it's a living thing from outside of Earth.
Yeah.
Basically what that's sort of phrase means is what it's saying.
Which is interesting because that throws up a whole different thing. Because when we first started doing the podcast and we were talking about what some people, you've got EBEs, which people talk about as an alien form, and the fact that I thought aliens came from out there. I say out there, out of planet Earth in space somewhere. And then as we've gone on our journey the last couple of years, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not. Maybe they're here and it's interdimensional. And I know that's a thing at the moment, people talking interdimensional. But for them to go back to this post and he's saying like exobiospheric organism, which again, like you just said, talks about it being outside of Earth. That suggests that it is off-world, off-planet, and it's not from here. Not even different dimension. It's just not from here.
Yeah, fills it wide open again.
It does. It does. Interesting thing where you talked about EBOs and what it stood for and the fact that we both couldn't find anything for it on the internet. He mentions the fact that there is no internet access in the lab. Only the senior scientists and I think the director of the program has got internet access when they're there. And the only access they've got to online is through like the intranet, like the company's internal internet, which all companies have an intranet as such, where they keep their own stuff. And it's not connected to the outside world as such. So that was another little detail which I thought was quite nice because it ticks the why aren't people search criteria being sort of, you'd think people would go online in lunch and Facebook checking in a clandestine EBO lab.
You think there'd probably our phone signal down there either.
No, that's it. And again, great way of doing it because you're in a basement. You can cut off signal quite easily. Again, a small detail, but actually a very good detail.
Yeah, for sure. So, shall we move on to the actual EBOs?
Yeah, so just one very brief step backwards. He was saying that his first few weeks in the job that he really enjoyed and they were very memorable because, like you pointed out a bit earlier, that he was able to read documents, see presentations, all these manuals on stuff, and he spent a lot of time reading that during the first few weeks, which is interesting because he got kind of like an induction program into this is what you're going to be dealing with. And I'm not being funny, but if I sat there and they go, right, okay, first down the job, welcome to the company, tour of the site, the normal stuff, health and safety briefing, whatever. So you're going to meet your team lead or your senior scientist that you're going to speak to and be part of this group. But first of all, we want you to just have a read through this material. And you sit down, you open this book, and there's this picture of this fucking alien going, this is what we're working on. This is the program. This is what our goal is. Because essentially, they must have some kind of goal, and they must have said, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is the aim of the program. you're in on it, you can't discuss it with anybody, and chances are if you did discuss it with somebody, they wouldn't believe you anyway, because it is quite a far out kind of job to have. But imagine that the first few weeks on the job, you're reading this information and your head must just go and you just go home every night just tired because your just mind has been open to this world that potentially you'd never even thought about before.
Like, it is like, especially where it's coming from, you must like. I mean, it is life changing. It is world changing, and
It's-
supposed to sort of
yeah.
do that. Sort of say like, this is it. See how they react. See how they kind of process the information and how they sort of start behaving and stuff. Because it could totally fuck people up.
Yeah.
Learning this.
Can you imagine? You're reading that, you either think it's some big joke and what's going on, and then the more you're reading into it, it's like, this ain't no joke. And
Looking for the
I
cameras,
bet,
like, looking for the
yeah,
cameras somewhere.
and I bet they must follow these people home. They must tap their phones or something, or monitor their internet traffic for those first few weeks to basically find out if they've got loose lips. Because as they say, loose lips sinks ships. That's the old saying, that people start blabbing, and that's when you give away stuff that they probably don't want you to give away. So it must be a very weird first few weeks on the job, because you're just like, the fuck is all this? What have I let myself into? Because I'm wondering where in the interview chain are you actually told what you're going to do. It's probably once you've signed that NDA, that's when they tell you. It's a bit like a Men in Black type job interview. I know, not quite that Hollywood, but it must be weird because you're going for these jobs, and I wonder what they're telling you you're going to be doing for you to go through a series of interviews.
And like, I wonder what the colleague is like. Like, oh, there's a new guy. Here's the aliens.
Let's really fuck him up. Put one on and go like round the corner like a mannequin.
That scene with Independence Day when President Bill Pullman goes into the hangar and you have like the bodies and the shoes and stuff. And he's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
He's like, I want to see him.
Kind of think how. I mean, he does describe how they're stored, but I don't know how your brain comprehends that kind of. Essentially, it will change everything that you've ever been taught. Really, everything that your life has been up to that point changes from there on. Your home life might stay the same, but you won't, because you've just learned something that only a handful of people globally know about, really, for reasons that of national and world security. And it must change you. It can't not change you.
And I think, like, even after reading the reports and looking at the pictures possibly and presentations and stuff, I don't think anything can still prepare you for like seeing it laid out in front of you on a table.
Exactly.
I think actually it wasn't a prank. This is real.
It seemed like a good idea at the time, and then you go, I know we're making a bit of light about it, but it must be this process going through your head. It can't be anything other than that. I would defy any human to not reevaluate everything at that point.
And he was still quite fresh out of university. Like, doesn't go into detail about his age or what sort of schools he went to, anything like that. Obviously, identifying reasons, but it's like he'd only recently graduated, was then on his PhD, and then got kind of introduced or whatever, took on for this. I was thinking, is this what all scientists do?
Yeah.
Like, it was my first job out of university, and it's this.
But it I don't even know how you, like I say, I don't know how you would process it. once
Nothing would compare either. Like afterwards, what other job would
no,
be like that?
yeah. So I just wanted to cover that off because I think we talk about people working on these projects, but we haven't discussed how they really get into. I know a lot of them go through the military and stuff like that, but we haven't had an opportunity where somebody said, "I've had these job interviews," blah blah blah. So I think it was an important point to.
And actually, on continuing on that point is kind of why is leaking or telling the world basically about his information. And in his words,
Yep.
he says he's disclosing the information because he believes that every human has the right to know the truth, and that to progress, humanity needs to divest itself of certain institutions and organizations that will probably not survive these revelations in the long term.
Yeah.
So take from that what you will. But for me, I think he's talking about like religion, religious organizations, some governments, and stuff like that. When he says so, certain organizations and institutions, which basically controlled the planet for the past 1,000 years, aren't going to, like I said, in his words, aren't going to survive once all this is all known, in fact.
Mm-hmm. That's it. It's church and religion. And I think some of the 3-letter agencies that are around now might not be around. But yeah, that is a good point. He also mentions about small leaks. What was his words? He said, small leaks are necessary to break the dam of misinformation on this subject, which I thought was quite a nice way of saying it. If loads of people do lots of little holes in the story, then that dam's going to break. So, but yeah, it was interesting choice of words he uses about divesting itself, which is words I've never even heard of. He uses a lot of words I've never heard of. With my GCSEs, and that's it. So, interesting word, very well articulated, very well written, which a hoaxer probably just comes out and tells a story and is not too fussed about language. But a lot of time has been used to construct the sentences in a very nice way.
And he's probably been thinking about it for a long time.
Yeah.
He's probably gone over and over that. He probably had that post written for like months and just keep changing things to it and going over it before he actually hit the like post button on Reddit, knowing that his life could change. Like as soon as he submits that thing to Reddit, of all places.
And for those that don't know, Reddit is like an online, I want to say social media platform. It's kind of a weird social media platform.
Kind of like a forum, like the old message boards.
It is like an old message board thing with every kind of subject and every kind of subreddit or subgenre that you can think of. There is a subject on Reddit about that weird subject.
Yeah.
Anything. I mean, it's a fascinating place. It's very wild. It's almost like the forum version of Twitter sometimes. It is a bit wild. There's a lot of people making a lot of very dark humor jokes and comments. It is, if you go into it, it's very anonymous as such.
And there's not much moderation. Some of the like, specific subreddits have moderators and rules and stuff, but in general, like you can post whatever the fuck you want on there.
Yeah. Which makes it interesting at the same time as it's quite a crazy place. So I do like Reddit at times. There's some very interesting subreddits and whatnot. Some funny ones. It's light-hearted stuff. Everything in between. So just to give everybody that doesn't know what Reddit is a very high-level overview.
And there's even a subreddit called, there's a Reddit for that, where if you don't know where to find something, just literally say, I'm looking for this, and then someone will send you in the right direction to a subreddit for that particular topic or conversation that you want to read about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. A lot of the stories that you see online have come from Reddit first. A lot of newspaper, Daily Mail, fucking rips Reddit stories off like no one's business. It's always a Redditor said this, a Redditor said this. So if you've not experienced Reddit, have a little look. It's a great place.
It is most of the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get to the bodies, I guess. The actual alien
Let's do it.
bodies. So he claims to have worked on these EBOs, which he says are anatomically very similar to the grey, the typical grey alien that has obviously been part of UFO world for a long time.
Yeah.
Basically very similar to the classic grey. The height is about 150 centimeters, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head.
So 150 centimeters is about 4 foot something.
It's like a bit smaller than an average human, isn't it, really?
Yeah, 4.5 foot, something like that. Yeah. A taller child, but
A lot of the story of greys is like a tall child type height.
Yeah.
I say the 4 to 5 foot type height. They have a grey skin, again, the grey, which is in fact a biosynthetic film, which likely serves to protect the creature from a hostile environment and adequate protection against the passage of liquid. So instead of it being a skin, it's like a film, which is quite interesting. I've read that before. Don't know where, but it did strike some sort of distant memory in me.
Yeah, I've read somewhere that it's like a suit. That isn't their skin, that is a suit that they wear, a biosuit type thing.
And under this film, the epidermis is rather white, and the texture is very regular and without any hair. Again, very similar description to UFOs. We do not see any defect other than the folds near the joints. And reports that some of the reports you mentioned that he'd read stated that a strong lingering smell of burnt hair and ammonia is present when the film is removed from the body.
Interestingly.
We've heard that.
Yeah.
We've heard that.
The Virginia case.
Yeah.
They were talking about that kind of strong odour. It is, it's something that comes up a lot.
And the very interesting part, which I'll come on to it in a little bit, is that there are a lot of pores on the skin. And these glands and pores are the terminal part of the excretory pseudoriferous system.
I'm glad you said that because I couldn't even read it, let alone say it.
At first time I tried to pronounce it out loud, but I think the first part of that is the main bit, excretory, basically excretion.
Yep.
So the pores are responsible for the excretion, which could explain the smell. But like I say, we'll come on to sort of this side of it after we talk about the description of the actual body. So the head contains 2 large, oversized eyes.
Standard.
2 nostrils without protuberance. Again, just like slits rather than actually outward nose.
Yeah.
A narrow mouth without lips, teeth, or tongue. And 2 ear canals without auricles. So just basically holes rather than ears. The mouth feeds directly to the esophagus and the nasal cavity straight to the trachea. Like the skin, the eyes are covered with a semi-transparent biosynthetic film that offers the same protection, whilst also providing protection against certain wavelengths and light intensity. When the film is removed, a more traditional eye is revealed, which is about 3 times larger than the human eye, and there are no eyelids. The size of their eyes suggests they have excellent night vision.
Okay.
Again, that's not something I've not really heard that.
No.
That they have night vision. I guess, how would we know if we've been abducted or whatever, or visited, that they have night vision?
Which explains that film over the eyes, because if they're operating in the daytime or in a lighter environment, that is like a UV filter, and I suppose. Because that would make sense why when you're peeling it back, there's a more traditional eye behind it. It's more like if you've got a big eye like that with no eyelids, how do you protect yourself from the light? Because you think in the sun, that's quite an intense thing, especially if you're probably more set up to a lower light environment. So just so wear shades, basically.
Yeah, and maybe they can control that cover and take it off at night and like stuff or whatever. They have a process like a muscle or something to move protection.
Yeah.
On the eye, the brain is composed of 4 major sections, with the volume of the brain around 20% greater than that of a man of the same height. So bigger brain, bigger head, more intelligence.
Yep.
It should be more intelligent.
Likely, yeah.
The neck is proportionally longer than that of a human, and at the same time relatively thin, and there are no vocal cords. So we don't think they have a way to speak out loud anyway. The ribs and sternum are clearly visible, and there are no nipples. The abdomen is wider than the thorax and bulges slightly forward. There is no navel, nor are there any genitals or anus. So no reproductive system either. Again, a very common trope of creatures. Their hands are 4 digits, including opposable thumb.
Yep.
They have no nails, and the texture of their fingerprints is composed of concentric circles. Fingers are proportionally much longer than in humans, as are the feet, which are relatively longer and more narrow. And at first glance, they said that the feet thought they had just 2 digits, but a necropsy soon determined that each toe was made of 2 fused digits.
Okay.
2 big toes made of 2 little toes.
Stuck together. Yeah.
Something. Yeah. Again, detail about fingerprints. Like there's little details.
Yeah.
The
what goes through my head straight away when you were describing it? Paul. And his body and everything like that.
Yeah.
But interesting that your image of what he's saying, sort of, I can imagine exactly what he's describing. He describes it so well. Like you mentioned, down to the fingerprints.
I'm missing out a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Just to make it not too much information overload and just be able to describe it easier. And each one of these sections was like a big paragraph on the post. Just summarising the main kind of features. So you can, you can picture it.
We'll also put a link to the Reddit up there as well, just so people can read the whole thing, because it is fascinating.
Yeah. The exoskeleton. No, not the exoskeleton. The endoskeleton. Very similar to ours.
Yep.
There's collagen, hydroxyapatite, but also copper oxide crystals instead of where you'd usually find bone marrow. So there's like copper crystals inside the bones. And the role of these crystals has not been found out, basically.
Yeah.
One of the questions he answers is about the copper. They say in the high copper level, both in the bones and in the blood, which I come on to, is high. Like, it would be very dangerous. Like, basically, human won't survive it. So how do they kind of deal with having this high copper? Basically, like, we don't really know. We think a lot of the sort of excrement side of it manages to control it. But again, it's copper in the blood and bone, which is weird. Like I say, the information the source gives is much more detail with many words I've not even seen before. I'm not going to try and attempt to read or understand half of the words he talks about. But when I talk about one of the more interesting parts of it, I mean, it's all fascinating. It's all, like I say, the amount of details insane, things you wouldn't really consider. And if a hoaxer's going into this sort of detail, he's got a hell of an imagination. If he's thinking up all this off before, even if he's thought about it for a long time, it's a lot, very, very creative person. If for this amount of detail,
100%.
One of the more interesting points is that there's no genitals or anus get rid of waste. And like I say, they have basically thousands of these pores all over the skin. There's a large medial organ called the hepatorenal organ. It acts the same as kidney and the liver, basically process the waste. And then this waste is pushed through a different part of the body. Then it's sent towards the four limbs, the arms and the legs. And then the end of it is where it comes out through the skin.
That's fucked up.
Basically, it's absolutely insane.
It's like a horror film, isn't it?
So you don't poo, it just comes out your skin.
But weirdly, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Like, from a person that knows absolutely nothing about biology or chemistry, or from what you've just said there, that actually doesn't sound weird. It sounds like, oh, actually, yeah, that probably is how it works.
Do you think when we sweat as humans, in one, it's a way to cool down.
Yep.
Body's cooling itself down, but you also are getting rid of
impurities
toxins and stuff
in
the skin and in your body. So technically, it's the same sort of process.
Except he's just shitting out of it.
Yeah. And there's no urea cycle, which means that the ammonia concentration is very high. Which
is where that smell comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And John Lay, he is someone that in the past mentioned that basically the aliens that he talked about excrete waste through the skin. So it's something that has been mentioned. People, John Lay, who used to talk about the Dust Space battle, and a lot of stuff about abductions and government cover-up and stuff. He's quite controversial. Figure, to say the least. So their respiratory solar system is equivalent to ours, where they need to oxidize organic components to produce energy. Their lungs have no reciprocating action, like we breathe in and breathe out. Rather, they have a unidirectional flow of air similar to those seen in birds, which is more efficient than ours. So maybe built a bit better than us. They have a heart with 2 ventricles and 2 arteries, with aortas, veins, and arteries.
Yeah.
And talking to the blood, again, very similar to humans, but with a much higher proportion of plasma and metal ion levels, such as copper. And due to the amount of sort of metal in there, it's more brownish.
Yeah.
And it's not clear what role the copper play in the bones and the blood. But it could be that it neutralizes ammonia, among other things.
Yeah.
There's no true stomach, and it's strongly believed that the EBOs can only consume food in liquid form. Like, they have no teeth or so they can't chew food. They've got no proper digestive system. It's kind of like if they drink this liquid, it just goes into the pools in the body a bit and then gets processed and then put back out the skin. As a waste.
And I bet their body is more efficient at processing waste than we are. We're pretty crap at it, for want of a better phrase. But we can be quite inefficient, and we produce a lot of waste, don't we? And probably these things are better at metabolizing than we are, I imagine. Because if you're at that advanced sort of level of your body and brain and stuff like that, you've probably evolved to a point where you are better at it, which would make sense.
And I think the food side of it, they evolved to a point where they don't need food.
Yeah.
But food is just that stopping to make a meal, eating just slows you down.
Yeah.
Whereas that time could be better used doing something more productive. And they say you don't have taste buds or anything so it's just basically to use it as a necessity rather than something they want. It's something they just need. So you just get this liquid down, and that's all you need to basically for your body to.
They just have the nutrients required, and that's it.
Yeah. But given this strict limitations on the type of food they can have, it says that it's unlikely that this type of creature could survive in our biosphere on Earth without technological support.
Okay.
So it must have something in their suit or whatever to help him basically live on our planet. So it's a sizable nutshell, but that's the gist of the bodies.
Yeah.
that he describes in this thingy. So, before we go into a bit more detail, what do you make of that? What was your first thoughts on reading it as well?
First thoughts from reading it was that it's highly detailed, highly technical, and the thing is, it sounds like it doesn't sound too made up, if that makes sense. It's believable, and like I just mentioned, without having any kind of science or biological background myself, I know it's hard to believe, but I just think the way he describes how the body functions suggests that that's how it is. It comes across very legit to me. Again, who knows? But from what we're saying about the pores on the skin and the excretions and the ammonia smells and all that kind of stuff, that kind of like, you know what, I hadn't really thought about why they smell weird. People like the Virginia case is the classic because they talk about this horrible sort of smell, and if you're wrapped, you get your arms wrapped around, or you wrap around one of these aliens like one of the people did, and you got all this weird slime and stuff on you, and you become ill.
And he died.
Yeah, he did die.
It's severe sepsis that killed him.
Yeah,
And if he did have basically that creature's waste,
yeah,
and
because that's essentially
causing infection, or
yeah,
whatever,
sort of essentially like poison to your body. Because and that it kind of makes sense. That's the thing; it makes sense. You go, actually, that's not too weird. So
if you've got an alien, like say you wrap your arms around it and it's got a weird slime or whatever, you might just think, oh, that's just its skin, we don't know what it is, it's creature, but say that is actually its waste, that's its shit, basically, that you're rubbing all over yourself, and that caused him to get ill. I mean, it would do.
Yeah, because he mentions this like a greasy film over the outer exo skin or whatever we're going to call it. Yeah, I mean, if you read that in a science journal, I would think that was genuine. It just describes it to a T, and it describes it and makes a lot of sense about all the stuff that I hadn't probably thought about, but now it's been said, I kind of go, yeah, that seems right. You haven't got a tongue, you haven't got teeth, you probably do ingest some kind of liquid instead of anything else. You excrete stuff through your pores, and because is basically ammonia and all the other bits and water and that's why it smells a lot. It makes sense. What do you think? Because I was reading it, I was thinking, first of all, the language and the technical knowledge coming in, I was thinking, okay, now it's a lot of info that I don't understand, but the bits I did understand did make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, there's lots of nuances that we're not talking about because we just physically couldn't, not without making this 4 hours long, not making it a Joe Rogan episode. But yeah, like I say, even going back to like not having janitors in the labs or cleaners, again, you've not something thought about, but it just makes sense. Why they wouldn't have like a random cleaner with no credentials or anything to. I doubt cleaner can take a job on when you have to sign NDAs and all this stuff. It's a bit.
No,
they're paying them a hell of a lot just to be a cleaner, but not just be a cleaner, but like for a job, and a lot of cleaners be a lot easier than having to think. You just think, nah, I'm not into this. But yeah, I mean, like I say, I'm usually pretty skeptical, usually pretty cynical, but this one's just really, really been fascinating to read. I've been really into it. I was like, let's do an episode tonight. Let's just talk about this because it's absolutely mental. Like, I really enjoyed getting whatever comes out of it, whether true or not. It's been fascinating.
It's fascinating. One bit that we haven't mentioned yet, and I said to you off air, there's 3 words that I really found interesting. Apart from the biospheric organism, again, that's There was 3 words that stood out for me, and then I'll tell you what they are. Fetal bovine serum.
Yes.
Now, bovine
Cow.
is cow.
Yeah.
And I can't even do justice to what he talks about. But basically, they've got a development of an EBO cell line named EPIG11 derived from epithelial tissues has led to the ability to transfect and overexpress proteins of interest. Don't really know what that means. But it says that this EPI-G11 enters a phase of exponential growth when exposed to fetal bovine serum, which all I could think about when I read that was cattle mutilations.
Yeah.
And I know it's something we're going to be talking about in a future episode because we've been discussing it and whatnot, and we've discussed it many times. Cattle mutilations is very fascinating. But could they explain cattle mutilations and the reasons for why cows predominantly are the ones that get mutilated, taken, whatever you believe happens? Why is it cows?
It does.
Those 3 words had me. Fetal bovine serum. So it's baby cow serum, or I said fetal. So that's before the cattle are born, isn't it? So when they're in the womb of the cow, I'm assuming.
That could explain why genitals getting moved.
Yes.
One of the parts that gets moved a lot is the
Why
genitals.
is there no blood? Why is there nothing left of these? I mean, this is a whole nother subject, but weirdly, as soon as I read that was the first thing I thought of, and I couldn't get past those 3 words. I've copied and pasted a lot of the Reddit onto my notes on the Mac, and you can go through and highlight bits, and I've highlighted and put it in italics and all sorts. Fetal bovine serum, and that was the 3 words that I've really hooked me, and I was like, fuck.
Yeah, it's a very important point. Again, like I said, when you first try and explain it, it's like, what the hell is all these words?
Yeah.
But like I say, breaking it down like that, yeah, makes total sense. And if you think about other mutilations, I mean, there's been like horse mutilations,
Yeah,
even human
goats, all
mutilations.
sorts.
Yeah, so maybe it's like one of these creatures. This is just me complete conjecture now, but maybe he needs some of this bovine serum, but he can't find the cow. There's a horse. They might be able to help him a little bit, just to give him a bit more energy or whatever he needs to live to get to find what he needs, or humans or goats, like you say, just a bit, not what he needs totally. Like say you're gonna die, but our plane crash, not good for me, but I'll eat one of the other passengers.
Yeah,
like just to survive, just to last until I can get the substance that I actually need. So that could be why mostly cattle, but other animals and human sometimes as well.
Yeah. So that was weird that I read that in there, and it's just like, shit. And again, it kind of legitimizes for me what this person's saying. It's kind of like, that's another box ticked. Not a box that I would expect, like it was I saw this UFO in the sky. It was like a disc shape. The classic flying saucer, it wasn't like that. But this one, he ticks a lot of things. And the detail he gives, the janitor thing, this excretion of ammonia and waste, which then leads off to Virginia, and ticks that box off. Go, oh yeah, that's the definite one. You've got this bovine serum. Oh, that ticks off. That it could explain cattle mutilations. I know we're hypothesizing quite a lot, But it's those kind of things that you get to a point where you've ticked off so many things that seem to make sense of what is a crazy topic. There's no doubt about it. But if you can tick off a load of those, that it kind of going, yeah, you're at 10%, you're at 20%, you're at 30% accurate, like, of the truth. And I don't know, what's your overall thought? I mean, we've only scratched the surface on this story.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I want to believe it.
Yeah.
Out of everything we probably heard this year, the past 18 months, it's probably my favourite kind of story that's come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we go on to that. We'll talk shortly about some of the sort of the skeptical. Obviously, we can't not talk about the kind of what makes it not true as well.
Yeah.
But for me, overall, I don't think we're going to see anything more on it.
No, I think this is a one and done type thing.
Yeah, this person's not coming back. This probably got maybe one of them Reddit threads that goes down in history. Maybe like, 2 years ago on this date is when this story came out, and there's been nothing since. This person never came back or like never reappeared anywhere. So I reckon it probably is going to be that kind of story. But it's like I say, it's beyond sort of any other kind of anonymous source leak we've had.
Yeah.
It's far beyond that.
And for those of you that listen to the podcast, which obviously you are now, hopefully. Well, if you are, then you are, obviously. But Ash is the cynical one of us two and doesn't get that upbeat about stuff, which you quite rightly do. But I received a message from Ash today that's just had the link to the Reddit story. And I was like, I'll have a read. And you put, this is absolutely insane. So I put, ooh. And you're like, something we could do an episode on. So this is something that you've sort of like directly come to me and said, yeah, this is mad, let's do it. Which people that know you're normally the one that's kind of doesn't get excited about stuff. So
a bit more
that
skeptical.
was just like, I need to check this out. If Ash is going, you need to read this, then
yeah, I thought it deserved like a full sort of breakdown into it as well, rather than like maybe 20 minutes on the round table. I think it deserved because there's that much to go into. But we've not even finished what we're talking about. Some of the stuff we need to go into. Yeah, everyone does, like say, only just scratch the surface of it.
Yeah.
Now I'm talking about the genetics. Yeah, which is just I skipped over it mostly just because it's genetics, it's DNA. No one knows what the hell it all means.
That's it. Unless you're in it, you don't know what it is. It's true.
Yeah, but the main point that comes off it is that if they're coming from a different biosphere, a different planet, or whatever, and you said that they can't survive here without some sort of support, you'd expect the DNA to be different genes. But what he basically says is that they're very similar, and that both biospheres, let's say planets, so Earth and this other planet, where they share a common ancestor. Yeah, there's cells that have the genetic material that was part of the same biosphere, and then at some point in history, it split. And then one became Earth, and one became this other place. And they're that similar that you can actually combine them. You can take a human gene and insert it into an EBO cell, and it'll turn it into protein. Put an EBO cell into a human gene, and it'll turn it into protein. They do go together, which is, again,
mind-blowing.
Yeah, and does that tick off the hybrid?
It does.
Stuff
it
that
does
people
a little
talk
bit.
about.
And the fact that why are they abducting us and having some kind of breeding program with us? Because obviously Which again, it makes sense now why they would do that, because we're not too dissimilar. And the fact that they can have the bovine blood and serum, again, they wouldn't be able to do it unless there was some kind of common compatibility.
Yeah, with cows.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, again, that's just one. I mean, like I say, you read it, it's like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs, but that's kind of a little bit lame in terms of this is what he's saying.
Yeah.
So, at the bottom of the post, obviously, lots of people commented. Like I say, lots of people in the field were asking questions. He was answering questions to the point where he's answering fast, he's answering them precise, he's answering them with a lot of knowledge. But these people that have worked in genetics, worked in biology, are basically saying, this guy's legit. I'm satisfied from the answers he's been given to my questions that this guy works in this field, and that lends credibility to the whole thing, because we're not able to kind of question him on the part of the story where we can question him. We can't, like, it is past the test basically that he's not lying on this part of it, so he's more likely to not be lying on this obviously more outlandish side of it. So just a couple of questions. A lot of the questions were very, very even more technical than the original posts. It's just like obviously two biomedical genetic scientists having a conversation with each other, which is just not, anyone outside is just like, no, I don't even know what these words are. But a couple more interesting questions that I picked out. Someone asked, has he shared it with the Senate Select Commission on Intelligence or with Arrow or any other groups? And do you have the evidence to back it up? And he said, no, he hasn't and he won't. I will not place my life in the hands of politicians. I have no proof other than this message. I know it's not much, but it's what I'm prepared to offer. Surely he has some proof, though. If he was to go to Congress or whatever, like, you must know names and names of projects, and I mean, maybe he doesn't. Maybe everyone works under false names and a lot of this stuff. But he says he has no proof, but must be something. Worked there for years.
Could he go to the Senate committee in Arrow if he was a contractor, and he might not even know who's funding them? So, like these whistleblowers, you've got people like David Grush who worked for the military. All of these people is for people within the military government to come forward. I don't know how contractors are.
Yeah, no, good point.
It's just a thought that I don't know if he would. I haven't checked out the whistleblower wording precisely to see how subcontractors are dealt with. And you don't know what he was told at this NDA signing. He might have been told, if this comes out, you're fucked, basically.
But then on the other side of it, you got the other legislation, the cross retrieval side of it, where the contractors have to give the information they've got about cross retrievals to him.
Yeah.
So maybe there is something that covers this type of subcontracting as well as cross retrievals. Whether if this class is a cross retrieval, if these bodies came from a crash, would this be a cross retrieval situation?
And interestingly, he mentions right at the start that these bodies are not all intact. And he seemed to think that if somebody had had a motorbike accident, that's the kind of injuries that these beings had, which I thought was quite interesting. So it would suggest crash retrieval to me at that point. But we don't know how long those bodies had been there. They were stored at minus 80 degrees in a like an arid environment, so it kept the humidity right down, but in a horizontal morgue, basically, at minus 80. So,
and we can't ignore the fact fact that it's pretty much the anniversary of Roswell
Yeah.
this week.
Yeah.
He picked it because of that. This is, like, say, we've been working on it for months, thinking about posting it. Did he think that this is a good time to do it on the anniversary of Roswell crash? Retrieval bodies, allegedly. Is it the Roswell bodies that he's been working on?
Yeah. Yeah. And is that why somebody thought it was a good idea to put a story out like this? Because we have to look at it from that pinch of salt bit.
Yeah.
So,
One of the other questions, which I thought was really interesting, only a short one, but he says, so the question is basically, so they are bioengineered worker bees? And he says, yes. Knowing that they're disposable, unable to live independently without technical support, and they're ephemeral? I'm not sure what that means. Ephemeral. The only suitable hypothesis is that they are alive only to accomplish their task.
cool.
Very
So, like
interesting.
workers, and that's it.
And going back to, we spoke near the start about basically reports that he'd seen that included them talking about their religion, their culture, and stuff.
Yeah.
So someone asked, basically, can you expand on the documents that talk about the religion? You think how even if you have got a body, how are you going to know about a dead body's culture? And he says that these creatures believe that the soul is not an extension of the individual, but rather a fundamental characteristic of nature that expresses itself as a field. With time, with the right conditions, life in turn becomes more complex until the appearance of sentient life. After reaching this threshold, the field begins to express itself through these sentient beings, forming what we call the soul. Throughout their life experiences, sentient beings will in turn influence the field in a sort of a positive feedback loop. This in turn further accelerates the complexity of the field. Eventually, when the field reaches a critical mass, there will be a sort of apotheosis. It's not clear what this means in practical terms, but this quest for apotheosis seems to be the EBO's main motivation for them. This soul field is not a belief but an obvious truth. He also argues that the soul loses its individuality after death, but that memory and experience persist as part of this field. This fact would influence the philosophy and culture of the EBOs, resulting in a society that doesn't fear death, but which places no importance or reverence on individuality. Again, kind of everyone likes loads of worker bees. This belief compels them to seed life, shape it, nurture it, monitor it, and influence it for the ultimate purpose of creating this apotheosis. Paradoxically, they have little or no respect for an individual's well-being. It sounds like, it's very similar to some religions with, like, sort of you're aiming to this great, maybe heaven.
Yeah.
This is what you're aiming for. This is the whole purpose. Is to get to heaven after you've been alive, and that's all you're on here for.
Yeah.
And the information, again, this gets a bit interesting, comes from a document who the author was directly interacting with an EBO.
Well,
doesn't go into more detail, but talking to it, getting answers from it. He must have been alive at some point if they're getting these answers about how they sort of see life and, well, afterlife in effect.
because there is video on the internet of like a grey being interviewed. I think they call it Bob or something like that, don't they?
Yeah.
Which obviously is what it is, but that's the kind of impression that I get, that they've had conversations with this creature, EBO. And that must be quite an extended conversation, because you can't learn some of the nuances of how they see life just on one
That'll be the
conversation.
first question you ask, is it?
No, it's not. It's not.
Sounds like a
What
late
the
night
fuck is with those
conversation.
eyes?
Sounds like a late night conversation you have, like when you made having a drink, now you're just all chilled and talking about random things that
goes to the full meaning of life. And but interestingly, when they say about the when you mentioned about the fact that they like their emotions towards people, they haven't got that. Is that how you said it? That they
have like little or no respect for an individual's well-being,
and that's kind of what you get. That these greys, for want of a better phrase, these greys are literally seen as aggressors, devoid of any kind of emotion. There's no empathy, and that kind of ticks that box as well.
They're just doing the job.
Yeah, they're doing a job. There's no emotion. We're just doing a job. And like people like psychopaths and serial killers, they are devoid of that kind of empathy. They don't see their victims. I'm not saying the Greys see us as a victim, but they have no empathy on.
I need this. I'm going to get that person. I'm going to do what I need to do to him, and then put them back.
That's
I don't care about what happens to them.
Yeah, I need to get blood or whatever from this creature. I'll just do it. And that probably, you get desensitized to that over time anyway. And if that's in your breeding, and that's just generationally how you are, then it's just natural that you just don't have emotion towards other living creatures. But they clearly have some kind of emotion towards their civilization to mean that they will do this for the greater good of the...
I just had that phrase in my head, and I was going to reference, because we've already talked about Paul, and I was going to say another Simon Pegg film, Nick Frost. Hot Force, the greater good. Don't care that they're killing people or whatever. It's just making the village better, making their world better for the sake of everyone, rather than individual people don't matter. It's the village that's... Mad. How it all links up to Paul? Maybe Nick knows. Maybe Nick and Simon know.
Maybe Paul was a documentary and it wasn't a comedy. Thoughts on that, everyone?
So I guess let's look at the skeptical side of it.
Yeah.
Look at some of the rebuttals of it, because obviously there's got to be a lot. There's got to be a lot. You can't just believe that this is true. So one of the first things that I saw people questioning or saying was that the post was made by AI. Someone's gone into ChatGPT or whatever and said, "Write me a post about all this and write it from the point of view of a genetics scientist." And that's how it's got all the terminology and knowledge, which is fair.
Yep.
Obviously, we know ChatGPT can make a lot of stuff up without prompts. Can just completely pull stuff from nowhere.
It can lie.
It can
That's
lie.
what I'm saying.
It can lie through its teeth, that thing. But then where that's sort of been debunked, the debunk has been debunked, is in the answers to the questions. The guy has come back quickly answering these questions in detail, lots of information. Yeah, they could have been feeding the questions into ChatGPT and putting the answers up. But like from the, I would say the replies that they got, these people asking the questions were satisfied that this was a real person that knew what he was talking about.
Yeah. So I did, just on the back of the bullshit thing, because a lot of people saying it's bullshit. I was on one, just doing a Google search, and we got a summary of this particular post. It says, if this guy is a bullshitter, he is the GOAT of all time bullshitters. Very interesting and fun read. The scary thing is, it all sounds very genuine. And that was a theme that I did see coming up when I was looking around, not on Reddit, but off Reddit. The people going, that's an insane story. It almost smells like bullshit, but it sounds completely genuine.
And people talk about LARPing, which I had to Google LARP. I'd heard the term.
I've heard it.
Kind of knew it was a negative. I thought it always kind of had negative.
It's like a trolling thing.
Connotations with it. No. So what a LARP, according to the Oxford Dictionary.
Wow.
LARP basically stands for live action role playing game.
Oh,
So, like Civil War reenactments,
cosplay.
cosplaying, yeah, thinking that's basically LARPing. It's live action playing a game. But when they say in this context, it's a negative thing. It's basically saying that this guy's living out a game. This is his character in a game. This is his story in the game. Basically, he's LARPing. But similar to what you just said, then if this guy, a lot of the comments, this guy's LARPing, he's the best LARPer that's ever LARPed because it's that much detail, it's that much stuff. Like saying is he a sci-fi writer? Like,
Yeah.
you couldn't get this sort of detail and stuff in films. This guy should be making being the creative. If he has made this up, just this sheer amount of detail, it's like it's too much to not be real with some of the stuff he talks about. But again, it could easily be.
Yeah, it's like you say. There's a lot of people in there that are very negative. It's almost too amazing to be true. That's a horrible. Too good to be true.
I'm not seeing Mick West comment yet.
Not yet. There's plenty of time for that.
I think I've seen him. Unless he's
digesting it.
Unless he's a bit like me, like, oh my god, me, is it real? I can't even debunk this yet.
I think the fact that it's anonymous, again, that's for reasons why they mention it, but it's not as meaty as having David Grush come forward and say, I'm holding my hands up, this is what I did. The fact the account's deleted and that there's all these weird things happening, it's playing out like someone's just hoaxing and then just gone, like a throwaway account on Reddit and just gone, I'm out. And even though they've answered the questions, the fact that they've now done one and gone leaves it to people like us having these conversations with no ending to it. We're kind of like, which is great if you're some kind of hoaxer, that you've gone viral. I also read that it might be somebody with multiple accounts on Reddit. So they're asking the question and responding quick because he's writing his own question.
Yeah.
So that was something that came up that I saw.
Yeah,
it
possibly.
could be someone like the higher people in Reddit jumping on the bandwagon of Roswell, jumping on the bandwagon of UAPs. Let's get this post out that is going to get people talking, to drive eyes to Reddit. Because weirdly, what happened today? A new social media platform came out, Threads.
True.
So you've got that came out. You've got Twitter that's going wild on UFO Twitter, and now Threads have got this thing. And their two owners are going to be fighting each other in a cage at some point. But all eyes are directed elsewhere at the moment. So it's another good place to put stuff if you just want to put bad news out, or news out, sweep under the carpet on the back of some all eyes are over there, let's divert other bits. But it's also a good way of getting people like us to podcast and drive content to Reddit. So
True.
That was one comment that the owners or the higher people of Reddit have gone, how can we drive content and eyes to Reddit? I know Roswell's coming up. Everybody's talking about UAPs. Everybody's talking about aliens and all that kind of weird shit. Let's go with an almost entirely believable, which it is when you read it all, content that's going to be difficult to debunk because like a lot of this stuff, nobody really knows what goes on behind closed doors, and B, this person's clearly got the intelligence or the background to answer questions about biochemistry and such like. So,
Yeah, very, very interesting. And on that note of, you don't need to go to Reddit. You don't need to drive traffic to Reddit. You can just listen to it all here.
yeah.
You're not going to understand it if you read it on Reddit.
I fucking hell. It blew my head off.
So 5 pages to try and write it into sort of how I could understand it, to try and get my head around it. I've been reading it all bloody day, literally. About maybe 12 hours or more reading about this stuff at this point. But yeah, no, it's been great to sort of dive into it. Some of the stuff that you mentioned that I had skimmed over.
Yeah.
Because there's that much in there. Like we could talk for 3 or 4 hours about There's a lot of stuff in missed that's probably important. This is just obviously how we read it, we interpret it. These are the points, basically trying to break it down into this is what we think is important. This is the gist of what it's saying.
Yeah.
So you can understand it a bit, hopefully.
I think we've covered off for the sort of the lay person who wants the information. It was almost, I nearly sent one back to you saying TLDR. For those people that don't know what it means, too long, didn't read.
Now they put back FRINT. Fucking read it, I'm not typing. Or something.
So for the people that think everything is TLDR, listen to the podcast. And I think we've covered off the main bits of the story. We can put a link to the Reddit if you want in the show notes.
Yeah.
If anybody's interested, and
click the link below.
Click the link below. We're both pointing down, and it's an audio podcast.
Also below will be a link to our Patreon. If you like what we've done, we've just launched our Patreon on last weekend.
Yeah.
Different tiers, just from £1 a month, just to support the podcast. And you get exclusive access to episodes that are only on Patreon.
Yep.
Extended versions of episodes of normal episodes put out, extended versions with extra content on.
Yep.
Early access to episodes before they go live on the main feed.
Yeah.
Discount on our merch store.
Yeah.
Shout outs on the show. So yeah, from £1 a month, patreon.com/Pursuit the Paranormal Podcast, I think is the link.
Yeah, that's it.
I didn't plan. I was glad to think that was the link. Well, yeah, the link's below as well.
Definitely. Well, mind blown, Ash. Mind blown.
I'm shattered after that.
Yeah.
Head's going to blow up.
So, yeah. As happened with the David Grush stuff, we'll see how it develops over the next few days. All the usual suspects will come out and have their words to say, I'm sure. Or they may not. Who knows? Who knows?
If something does more come, we may do a little update.
Yeah.
Little 10-minute thing, maybe. Talking about any updates to it.
Yeah.
If there is any.
Definitely. Cool.
Nice one. Cheers for listening. And we hoped we were able to help maybe understand or digest, I guess, the information a little bit easier.
Definitely.
There's a lot of text to read. There
is. But a good read. It's a good, interesting read.
It really is.
It's not often that stuff like this comes along, although it seems to be at the moment. It seems to be stuff, but to this level of detail is quite unusual that we get this kind of technical detail. So cool. Nice one, Ash.
Nice one. Cheers, everyone.
Speak to you soon.
See you later.
Pursuit of the Paranormal with Ash and Greg.